Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell. Thank you for joining today. This video is being recorded on December 13th. Please help support the work that I do by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can also be a paid member on my Patreon channel and my Substack channel. These are great ways to help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free, so please help support by donating, and better yet, get the great products that I offer. If you follow the protocol that I follow every day, you're going to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system, and you're going to have more longevity. You're going to have more vitality when you get older. So please, pay attention to how I take some of these supplements, stack them based on your affordability. If you pay attention, many of the supplements and the way I stack them have dual purpose, so you get more bang for your buck. So please follow the protocol. In addition, make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And you're going to need that free gift because something's coming from the UK. And you're going to need to be prepared. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver soaps that I have. I have 4 different types. You can get it in lemongrass, charcoal tea tree, peppermint, and in lavender. Get a few bars for your household. They're perfect as gifts. They help to cleanse the skin, very high quality, made from structural nanosilver. In addition, you need to boost up your immune system, especially during the winter season, and especially with what's coming around the corner, all right? So, Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points, but you take them the same way. Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is neutralize, improve your oral health, maintain the mucosal barrier, and help the health of the epithelial cells. This will help to boost up your immune system. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially during the winter season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day and do it the same way. You take it, you swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow. It's very simple. Once everything's all better, then go back to your maintenance dose. I've been using this protocol for over 5 years. So please take my advice, boost up that immune system. And if you do this on a regular basis, because you boost up your immune system, you're going to be slowing down the aging process, especially when you stack it with some of the other supplements that I have. And lastly, make sure that you get the drops. You're going to need these because something around the corner is coming, all right? And it has a K in it. So what you want is to get the structural nanosilver drops. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. And what this will do is help to neutralize, help to create the secretions, and help to produce a barrier, all right? You can get it in cherry, you can get it in blueberry, and also in honey and lemon. Get a few bags for your household. You never know when you need them at work or at home. Very high quality. Please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver drops. With that said, we're going to talk about 2 topics today. The first topic is going to be about Marxism capturing universities. The other topic is going to be dealing with the national security plan that was released by Trump's administration. This is a critique of that plan from some foreign affairs experts in Australia. All right, so with that, let's begin.
Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad's Age America. John DrPaul here, and welcome back to this, our 4th episode in our 6-part series exploring the depth of debate, starting in high school with the clubs that shaped so many of our best young minds and extending all the way into the broader society. And of course, in this episode, we dive into some of the headwaters of that transformation, in academia. And it includes some of your favorite guests here at Dad Saves America, like Brett Weinstein, Peter Boghossian, and James Lindsay, as well as others. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next 2 episodes. And without further ado, let's continue exploring the death of debate.
University debate team claiming an historic win.
I was making progress in my investing.
Are you wearing 7 layers and still freezing your man nipples? You need the new 340 GSM military grade bearskin hoodie to get comfortable in the wild. It's the ultimate 10-pocket tactical hoodie that blocks wind, repels rain, and regulates heat for incredible comfort wherever you go. It's the only winter hoodie that's built for working, fishing, hunting, camping, or conquering foreign lands. Thousands of men around the world already love wearing.
I was making progress in my investigation of high school debate and whether it had been corrupted by critical social justice and its speech is violence mantra.
This is already clear. That's exactly the point. It needs to be impacted.
But in one area, I was still running into walls, determining the truth about the National Speech and Debate Association, known as the NSDA. James Fishback is the biggest critic of the NSDA, and well, he is not a subtle man.
I'm going to hold ourselves to the American standard, which is to always do the best thing and not to compare ourselves to others.
He defends President Trump passionately.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
President Trump won 80 million votes, the popular vote, the electoral vote, all 7 swing states, because of himself and his leadership and his policy priorities.
He runs his debate league, Incubate Debate, with sharp elbows and the swagger of a politician.
True nobility is being superior to your former self.
And he attacks his main rival, the NSDA, with all guns blazing.
There's a certain irony that in high school debate, of all places, debate is no longer allowed. This isn't the canary in the coal mine. This is the last moment before the entire cave caves in. High school debate should be the last place to succumb to identitarian ad hominem attacks. The idea that because of your race, you can't make certain arguments, that if you merely use the wrong word, you lose the debate without question.
The question remained, were James's accusations true? And was his league, Incubate Debate, any better? Or was it just a right-wing version of the same problem? I was going to get a close-up look at Incubate because James invited me to be a judge at the national championship. Meanwhile, I kept trying to get an interview with the NSDA, and they kept ignoring me. But some evidence of their, let's say, wokeness was right out in the open. On their website, for instance, there's the usual buzzwords and woke dog whistles promoting belonging and inclusion stations for kids to use at their tournament, a document about the best practices for pronoun usage. And then there was the NSDA equity statement. We will take responsibility. We will heed, learn, and evolve. We will work conscientiously to model and foster an inclusive and equitable speech and debate experience for all. None of this sounded great. And look, there's nothing wrong with fairness, but by this point, everyone knew what was going on with this coded language. Let me decode it for you just to avoid misunderstanding. Equity, in this case, means rigging the rules to favor certain groups in the name of leveling the playing field. Diversity, in this case, means drawing stark attention to race and gender identity and segregating people accordingly. And inclusion? Well, in this case, that means excluding any ideas that make someone feel uncomfortable, especially these favored groups. And then there's the judge paradigms themselves on the NSDA's Tab Room website, centralized platform they provide for managing the whole debate process, tracking the scores, and more. What exactly is a paradigm? Paradigm is a description that debate judges, who are mostly volunteers and often college students, provide in order to help the student debaters prepare for the competition. It can frame the debate for the kids, and set the rules of how they will win or lose. At best, the judge paradigms ask for clarity of thought and mutual respect. But at worst, well, they say things like this. Before anything else, including being a debate judge, I am a Marxist-Leninist Maoist. I cannot check the revolutionary proletarian science at the door when I'm judging. And I will never vote for rightist, capitalist, imperialist positions or arguments. Here's another one from X Braithwaite. I'm X, aka Newark Science SB, parentheses, she, they. Frib theory belongs with tricks. I don't like it. It's violent. Disclosure theory is fine, except when you are debating a Black person or you are one. 1, this don't have to disclose to you. 2, disclose to me. We'll revisit the scandal of judge paradigms in our next episode, but these two provide an unvarnished window into the critical social justice ideology behind the fluffy DEI language on the NSDA's website.
My teachers were fairly socialist when I was in college, but you didn't have, I don't think, the number of sort of radical teachers or radical ideas as you do now. There are always, some debate coaches that their other coaches would call really a bump or really radical. But there weren't quite as many of them, and there wasn't as much anger about language and mislabeling. Earlier on, it was about overpopulation, environmental concerns, national health care, standard sort of progressive Democratic Party things. But these new things have crept into debate for reasons I don't fully comprehend.
To understand how a high school debate organization could end up adopting discredited revolutionary proletarian science and be a platform for promoting murderous Marxist-Leninist Maoist ideas to our middle schoolers, you have to understand the game being played in academia today. Exhibit A, the grievance studies affair.
I was in Portland, teaching at Portland State, which was truly an inconceivable ideological sinkhole.
This is Peter Boghossian. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing your evening. A philosopher and longtime professor focused on teaching critical thinking, pedagogy, and the Socratic method. In other words, an expert in the tools of debate and inquiry. And he knows the threat critical social justice plays to debate and free thought firsthand.
I was told I was committing microaggressions. I was told that questioning was a microaggression. Asking for evidence for policies that are being institutionalized was a microaggression. Asking for evidence of a microaggression is itself a microaggression. So I started to realize that there was a problem. Where are my colleagues getting their ideas? These ideas are totally unhinged from reality.
Boghossian, along with writer and fellow guest of the show, James Lindsay, found themselves more and more disgruntled by this thought-terminating ideology taking over academia. And the gobbledygook that passed for serious research. Then came the breaking point. This actual academic paper published in 2016. Glaciers.
Did you know that linen is the only fabric that bacteria cannot thrive on? This is one of the reasons Jesus told us to wear and sleep on linen.
Glaciers, Gender and Science, a feminist glaciology framework for global environmental change research. The feminist glaciology framework.
You know what it is that a lot of these research studies now are parsed so fine that they're coming up with categories. Here's a perfect example of climate change and gender. Glacier. I mean, this is insane. The title, let's read the title again. Here.
16. Glaciers.
Yeah, glaciers, gender and science, the feminist glaciology framework for global environmental change research. And because you have these sociologists that are publishing a lot of gobbledygook in peer-reviewed journals, this is what gets published now. It's garbage. It's garbage. And then you have the elite institutions asking for taxpayer money to fund this kind of research? conservatives need to push back. We need to get back to a simple time, all right? Facts, what your karyotype is, not what you want your pronouns to be, but what your pronouns are, all right? So when you have a society that is promoting this kind of crap, they're not going to be as productive. Now, what I remember noticing in sociology class at Fordham was there was this push for reframing what my generation, Gen X, was inculcated in, all right? What I mean by that is that when I took sociology later in life, I was around people that were younger, all right? So this was a required course, and there were younger people in the room. And I started having a glimpse in a school like Fordham, which is a conservative school in general. But you could see the shift in the population from my generation to their generation. And it was like they were really focused on their pronouns. They were about, this microaggression stuff. They wanted everyone to go, oh, I understand your thought process. And they didn't want debate. They didn't want facts. They didn't, here's a classic example where you parse information to such a small sliver and make up stuff like glaciers and gender and how it might affect people, right? And because it's so out there, so out in left field, certain journals publish that stuff because they'll get eyeballs, right? Something shocking will get your attention on TikTok. Something shocking on X will get your attention. Something shocking in the research, it will get more clicks to read. So this is shock value. So what is happening now is you have researchers that it's about pushing almost like an agenda, this reality distortion agenda that has shock value and try to get notoriety. You see this also in industrial design, all right? Long history in developing cars and designing cars and all that. A long time ago, before I decided to get in and change my career. But I used to design cars, all right? And just make parts, design parts, right? For subsystems for cars. And in industrial design, back in my generation, all right, it was about the quality of the product, the affordability of the product, the user experience, the form and the function. Now, when you get industrial designers that are making products today, it's almost like it's how shocking can you make it to get shock value, and then eventually your name gets known, and then you get more projects for your firm because of the name recognition, because you're so left field of good design. It was all just about shock value. So are they good designers? Most of their products don't have form and function. They don't solve the need for better manufacturing to produce a high quality, low cost product. It's all about shock value in their name. So modern industrial designers today, contemporary industrial designers, it's all about shock value to get their name known. This is what's happening in academia. It's about shock value. Because if you have enough shock value and there's some sort of debate and it gets viral, and then all of a sudden that professor or that student will get known and they'll be able to procure some sort of chair in some sort of institution, So it's all about themselves, not the research. All right. So there is this major problem. If you step back, it's about this postmodernism that's happening. This postmodern, it's all about relativism. Everything can go. There's, truth is, there is different dimensionality of truth, and whose truth it supersedes another truth is questioned. That there really isn't truth. It's all about your relative perspective. You see it in art, where do you have artists today? Very few of them can do really fine art that is of the quality of Vermeer or Rembrandt or Da Vinci or Michelangelo, right? Or the great painters, the classics. They gravitate to Pollock and maybe Impressionists. There's this move away from real art and into just a chaotic mess, modern art. And it's to shock you, right? So the same thing. And the problems that I saw with industrial designing now and artwork that's being produced that you would see in the MoMA now, contemporary artists, and researchers today, it's about name recognition, it's about shock value, and it's not really getting back to the basics of truth, virtue, quality.
Feminist Glaciology Framework for Global Environmental Change Research. The Feminist Glaciology Framework generates robust analysis of gender, power, and epistemologies in dynamic social ecological systems, thereby leading to more just and equitable science and human ice interactions.
Peter called me and was like, this is it. It's too far. If they'll publish this, they'll publish anything. We're writing an academic hoax.
Their hoax paper, of course, needed a catchy title.
The conceptual penis is a social construct.
Bogosian and Lindsay made their paper ridiculous, but right on the edge of believable, for woke academia, that is, with arguments like this.
Anatomical penises are not the male sexual organ. They are instead a social construct that makes men braggadocious and macho.
It basically argues, among other things, that penises are responsible for climate change.
They submitted their hoax, and it actually got published.
This ends up in a small, slightly predatory academic journal called Cogent Social Sciences. Peter and I spiked the football. We prove gender studies will publish anything bogus.
Bogosian and Lindsay didn't hide what they'd done, and the hoax became known.
Of course, the usual suspects lost their minds and said, this paper doesn't prove what you think it does. This is a low-level journal. You only did one. You got to do multiple papers. And I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Let's just do exactly what they told us to do.
That's when Bogosian and Lindsay, with the help of Helen Pluckrose, really went for it. The Grievance Studies Affair was born.
We wrote 20 intentionally broken, completely crazy, often vile, reprehensible papers, and then we just started getting them in exactly the kind of journals that they told us.
These papers are truly nuts and not safe for work or mixed company, so you have been warned. The titles include An Ethnography of Restaurant Masculinity, the Hooters paper. Who are they to judge? Overcoming anthropometry? Anthropometry? I don't even know what these words are. Okay. Overcoming anthropometry and a framework for fat bodybuilding. Okay. Going into... Okay, hold on. Going in through the back door.
This Black Friday gift cleans your retainer at the touch of a button. No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team of engineers knew there had to be a quicker.
This is the point that I was making.
Going in.
This is the first time I've seen this video. So you're getting my initial reaction to it, which I think is a good way to do a show. right? We're watching this together. So, but this proves my point that it's about shock value. These people that are, these sociologists out there that are pushing agendas that are affecting our portfolios, affecting the job market, affecting policy, foreign and domestic, affecting what's going on in the UN. These individuals, they're dangerous. They're dangerous because they're not hinged, they're not anchored to virtue, they're not anchored to truth. They're anchored to, they're not even anchored, but let's just assume that they're anchored to some sort of theoretical framework. If you dive into the depths of it, it's this postmodern relativism that anything goes. And you can't have a stable society for very long. Now, the reason why postmodernism took was it was to question orthodoxy. It was to question the parochialness of society and to help with the liberalization of markets, the liberalization of ideas. All right, these terms like liberal society or illiberal. Now, it is funny where you have real researchers trolling academic papers to prove that these sociologists will publish anything, even if it's totally made up. This is pretty funny, actually. But you have these types of individuals, these papers are the academic journals that set in motion certain policies that are taking place in academia, how certain classes are taught, what should be said in the class, the performance dynamics of a class, or the behavioral recommendations of a class. And this is not just in college. This is trickling down into elementary school, kindergarten. This is dangerous because, again, postmodernism is bad as a philosophy. We need to move, there's people talking about a new Renaissance, a new maybe Enlightenment. I think it's a new Enlightenment. Some scholars think it's a new Renaissance, a neo-Renaissance. But the point I'm making is that postmodernism and the way that our society is configured is devolving our well-being, mankind's well-being. So we have to move out of this postmodernism. And so it'll be like a postmodernism, neo-modernism, or however you want to call it. But we need to get out of this. And it's about having virtue and truth. And I think that the pillars for that are God, country, and family. When you strengthen those three pillars, you automatically move away from this postmodern garbage and you move towards truth and virtue.
The back door, challenging straight male homohysteria and transphobia through receptive, penetrative sex toy use.
We sent them to, Gender, Place, and Culture, the highest feminist geography journal, Hypatia, the highest feminist philosophy journal, Sex Roles, which is a very prominent interdisciplinary journal about sex roles, Feminist Journal, Feminist Theory, and so on.
Unbelievably, some of these papers, including all of the insane ones you just heard, were accepted and published, including the most notorious one of all, Human Reactions to Culture and Queer Performativity at Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon.
It got published. It won an award for excellence. And the Wall Street Journal started investigating, find out we're not real. And so this paper ends up getting us exposed. It was too over the top. It was too crazy.
In the end, 7 of their papers were accepted. 4 were published. But culture in dog parks was a bridge too far. So why did I tell you this whole long story in a video series about high school debate? Well, first of all, it's hilarious. But second, it's actually a powerful example of Peter and James understanding the people they oppose enough to masquerade as them convincingly. I doubt the editors of these journals or the Marxist-Leninist judges in NFDA debates could do the reverse. And that, frankly, says a lot. But more importantly, the Grievance Studies Affair provides an important lesson about institutional capture and the academic echo chamber.
The papers were actually not nonsense. They were vile and despicable, but they played into the moral orthodoxy. The purpose of the journals is to forward certain conclusions that then affect public policy.
This is the opposite of debate or the pursuit of truth. And when you operate in an environment that stifles debate and silences critics, you end up in a spiral of radicalization. Even though these papers sound totally insane to normal people, to the people at these journals, they sounded and actually read as if they were real, serious research. That was my main concern with the NSDA. Looking at their website with the inclusion stations and the DEI statement and their focus on pronoun use, and then seeing the judge paradigms that praise Marxism and the use of the N-word and actively promoting race-based discrimination, it seems entirely plausible that the crazy to us seems perfectly reasonable to them. Remember, Fishback's expose first dropped in 2023, when the country was still in the throes of the woke reign of terror, and in the wake of campus hysteria that had been plaguing our country for years. People in academia, college and high school, have a tendency to go along with the crowd whenever crazy ideas start to take hold, saying yes, yes, yes to basically everything.
Every so often somebody says no, like me, and all hell breaks loose because that person has to be made an example of in order that everybody else down the line says yes.
Enter Brett Weinstein. He was and is one of the most famous victims of woke campus madness. In 2017, Brett and his wife Heather were two of the most popular teachers at Evergreen State College.
On May 23rd of 2017 at 9:30 in the morning, a group of 50 students, not one of which had I ever met before, streamed into my classroom, accusing me of racism, demanding that I apologize and resign or be fired.
What was Brett's great offense, you might ask? Dropping a racial slur? Some egregious act of hate? Hardly. Evergreen had a tradition called a day of absence. This was an agreed upon day in which minority students and faculty didn't come to campus as a way to demonstrate their contributions to the school. Well, that year, an administrator named Rashida Love suggested that instead, white people should stay away from campus on that day. Brett didn't particularly like that.
The body scanner reveals the brutal truth about your body that your regular scale will never tell you. For weeks, my scale showed I wasn't losing weight despite diet and exercise.
Brett didn't particularly like that.
So I did the one thing that I could do, which was send an email to the all staff and faculty list that said, this is offensive. It's one thing to absent yourself. It's another thing to tell other people to go away. I plan to come to campus. You can take that as a protest. It, of course, got pushed back on email as if I had said something terrible. And this became the narrative justification for targeting me.
We come here as students against campus racism and against anti-Blackness on campus.
Brett's email led to the infamous mob of students coming to his classroom to confront him, and it led to all hell breaking loose on the campus.
Day of absence has been here longer than I have. I have never protested it until the idea, until no.
I was not concerned about their desire to see me exit the college. I had the equivalent of tenure. I was very popular, and frankly, they looked to me like a bunch of confused college students, and my job was to unconfuse college students. So I started to have a discussion with them. I tried to get them to engage me, to tell me what it was that they thought
They don't want it.
I was doing, what they saw
They're out
about
of
the racism
control.
on campus, and I wanted to try to persuade them that they misunderstood things.
Will you listen to me? Yeah.
You saw this if you were on campus during the BLM movement. Very similar. It's crazy. I'll tell you, it's crazy. Students today need people need to push back. Conservative people need to push back. It's about God, country, and family, truth, and virtue. And if you use that as your North Star, you will win. Don't let these Marxist liberal postmodernists take over. Don't allow it to happen. They want you to capitulate. Do not kneel. Remember the whole BLM movement? They wanted whites to kneel. Think about the BLM movement. All right? Did it have affinity to country? No. They disrespected the flag. Did they have an affinity to God? No. They were stealing from people. Theft, that's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal. All right? What about family? What about family? Do you think they have a strong family unit? Do you think they have a strong ethos with that? No, of course not.
Okay, but now if you decide to shut up, okay? I am committed to activism. I am committed, I believe, that anyone who would be alive, I happen to disagree with other folks in this case about the way there.
This actually enraged them even more. And I'm fortunate that they filmed the entire interaction and were so proud of what they were doing that they uploaded it.
Listen, you don't understand. History could pivot at this hallway right now.
When people looked at those videos, it caused a kind of a ripple in the matrix, as it were. People saw a straight white male professor being accused of racism and not doing what you would expect in 2017, which is backing down and apologizing.
I'm not an unreasonable person. I'm not uninterested. I'm not uninformed about history. I know the implications of these things. I have arrived where I've arrived from a different route. I've arrived there through academic study. I know why racism happens.
We live racism. We don't have to study it to understand it. We live it. I've been to the
I didn't sound like a racist. So it became an interesting story to people, and they started to tune in.
You asked me a question. I would like to answer.
The campus actually descended from that protest into a state of riot that persisted for an entire week.
Listen to this absolutely brainwashed student.
We would like Brett to be fired, but that isn't happening. The administration is refusing to take action. They're choosing to protect this white, cis male professor over its students.
And the spineless president of Evergreen, who actually defended the mob.
I think their concerns are legitimate. They're articulating ideas that have to do with race, ethnicity, power, privilege, and we're taking a look at it.
In the end, Brett and his wife Heather resigned from Evergreen, sued the school, and ended up with a large settlement. Brett, for his part, thinks the administration of Evergreen didn't like him from the start, and that's part of why he wasn't treated better. But Brett, in his typical fashion, is philosophical about it all.
My suspicion is, if you imagine for a second that you've got these students who are convinced that they are part of an evil society that has targeted them to effectively be enslaved, and that there is a resistance movement and that they have joined it. If you think that that's what's going on, and then you hear, but there's this guy, Brett Weinstein, he doesn't get it, it would be very natural to just wish something terrible would happen to this person. They just simply wrongly understood that I was the obstacle to some otherwise attainable utopia.
Utopia. That is what drives so much of this, and the siren song, frankly, of communism. I'm using that word, communism. That is what we are seeing on campuses. Students being brainwashed by discredited, diabolical ideas that lead to very, very dark places.
I look around the campuses of today and I see people who appear to have learned nothing from the 20th century. People behaving like they're red guards in Mao's Cultural Revolution, apparently unaware that that's what they resemble.
And Neil Ferguson set up a new school in Texas. It's UATX, University of Austin, Texas. All right. It's supposed to be designed to be the next Harvard. All right. Over time, it's going to take several years. It's heavily backed by the tech industry. Right. If you look at their curriculum, it's far superior than anything that you would see at Harvard and for the liberal arts program. Far superior by a lot. So what's going to happen is these students that are coming out of UATX are going to be much better at much more prepared to counter this woke ideology. All right. Now, he used to be a professor at Harvard, so he's seen, he saw the inner workings of Harvard and how his wife was ostracized by the student body and how they had to leave Harvard because his wife and himself were professors there. They decided to go to Stanford. Now, he knows a lot about what's going on in academia, especially at the Ivy League level. Now, Miss Taiwan, for the ones that watch my show, they know who Miss Taiwan is. Miss Taiwan has been stating on several shows of mine where this woke ideology, especially during that whole fiasco with Claudine Gay and how these students were protesting at these elite institutions and taking over the university, this is a Mao takeover. This is a Maoist method. People need to pay attention to that. I've been saying it. On campus, you got Marxism and communism taking hold. It's under the thin veil of socialism, social justice, DEI. But really, it's a Mao takeover. They want to destroy capitalism and destroy the constitutional republic.
The Red Guard are a scary but appropriate analogy. This was a mass movement of students formed in the 1960s by the communist monster Mao Zedong when he ruled China. The Red Guard, mostly high school and college kids, was created to defend the purity of Mao's brutal totalitarian ideology, to be warriors in
And that's what did they do? What did they do with the Red Guard? They either imprisoned, slave camped, or killed professors. They destroyed individuals that had any cultural affinity to old China. And it was coming from the youth. So this movement that's taking place in the United States, in colleges and in high schools, it's with the youth. And they're going to try to destroy the society. And so as they get older and they start getting into power, start moving into businesses in the corporate structure, then you can implode it. Look at what's happening with Mayor Wu in Boston. Double Harvard, went to Harvard College and Harvard Law. She's a major socialist. She's destroying the city, totally destroying the city. And I believe that she's also under investigation for fraud or something. I don't know all the details. But the thing is that she's a perfect example of this. She was part of this Red Guard movement that's happening today. So this whole postmodernism has led to Red Guard 2.0 in the United States.
and to enforce conformity to his utopian vision. They specifically were directed to attack the four olds: old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits.
Okay, now think
These
about
Red
that.
Guard destroyed millions.
Let's just dive into this just a little bit with these four ideas.
Old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. These Red Guard destroyed.
Okay. Old ideas, old culture, old customs, old habits. Now remember what I was saying. God, country, and family. It's the foundation of society. Old ideas. All right? Well, you have old ideas when you have patriotism. You have old ideas that you want to have. This adds to cultural affinity. And the old ideas helps the old culture. When you start eroding old ideas and old culture, so what's postmodernism? Postmodernism is get rid of the Renaissance, get rid of the Enlightenment. Anything goes. That's getting rid of old ideas. That's getting rid of old customs. What about old culture? Old customs, religious customs, right? They want to get rid of religious customs. And when you're getting rid of a culture, you're eroding the patriotism and old habits. See, everything old you got to get rid of. It's going to go to modernization for the state. It's not about the individual, it's the state control. God, country, and family will take you a long way. And it'll allow you to get to truth and virtue. You let those pillars crack, and you start getting into this Maoist ideology. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, what's your foundation? When you look at yourself, what's your foundation? If you don't have old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits, and everything's new, then you really don't have a strong foundation. You can't have everything new. You have to have some sort of theoretical framework, something you're building off of. There's no such thing as everything's new. Even a newborn baby isn't brand new. It had to be built up as a fetus in utero. Not only that, it has code from many generations previous to allow for it to function. There's nothing that's brand new. Think about it. If something's just brand new that has no hint of the past, no DNA of the past, is it really stable? Is it a stable thing? Probably not. Probably not. I can't think of one thing that is 100% brand new.
Millions of books, millions of pieces of art, and thousands of cultural sites. And they killed people. Lots and lots of people. Among the many targeted, a special focus was placed on intellectuals and teachers. Any of this sound familiar? It sounds suspiciously like branding benign and heady middle-aged white academics as racist.
I don't care what happens to Brett anymore. He can go and be racist and be a piece of shit wherever he wants to do that.
Wanting to destroy old ideas like capitalism and the family itself.
So when we talk about family abolition, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the abolition of that economic unit.
Tearing down statues of our...
Destroy the family unit? See what I mean? See what I mean? This is coming right out of their mouth. This is socialism 2025. Socialism 2025, some sort of... This is Democratic Socialists of America. Democratic Socialists of America. This is Mandani. That's what he represents. The left and the family, a round table. The abolition of the family unit to destroy the economic tentacles. What? See how crazy they are? They're nuts. They're fucking nuts. And we need to have conservatives to say, you know what, we're going to push back now. See, conservatives were like, well, just let them talk. They'll just, they're just blowhards, whatever. and then it'll just peter out. This is gaining momentum. This is dangerous. This can metastasize. Conservative people need to push back. You got to say, no, I'm not gonna play your game of the, and capitulate because you're afraid of microaggressions. Tough. Oh, you have a pronoun that doesn't really match your karyotype. Tough. Just push back. If they keep on pushing DEI, push back. Say no. It's not acceptable. It's about pulling up your pants, brushing your teeth, make your bed, and be productive. All right, before we continue, I need to plug some products here. Please go to my store, help support the work that I do. All right, and get healthy. If you follow the supplement protocol that I am mentioning in this video, you're going to slow down the aging process. These are supplements that I take on a regular basis, and I'm in my 50s. This is a great way to boost up your immune system, help your endocrine system, and slow down the aging process. All right? And it's backed by science. Omega-3. Omega-3 will bring down inflammation and help to control your lipid profile. It'll help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And when you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. That's super important. Cardiovascular health is super important to pay attention to. Make sure you do some cardio training and resistance training. I recommend 65-35 split. 65 resistance, 35% of your workout should be cardio. Magnesium and zinc boosts up your immune system and helps with brain function. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with skin, immune system, and brain function. Take them together for max benefit. In addition, people need to start paying attention to protecting your neurons, especially post-2020 crisis. Many people, about 30% of the individuals that are 40 years or older, are going to start developing different levels of dementia. There are 3 different categories. The largest category of the dementia will be ischemic. Why? Because of microclotting and microbleeding. The next category will be amyloidosis. Out of the 30%, 24.9% of them will have amyloidosis, a buildup of plaque that will lead to neural decline. And about 0.1% will develop prion disease. Now, the reason why the amyloid and the prions will start to develop in this 30% cohort group that's over 40 years of age is because of chronic inflammation and a shutting down of the ability to break up misfolded proteins. So it's really important to have proper blood flow and proper micronutrient microenvironment around the neuron to keep it healthy. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, vitamin C and magnesium, boost up your immune system, and help with your brain health. Olive leaf extract, super important. It helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system, brings down inflammation, helps you control your lipid profile. And the heirloom barley detoxifies your body, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals. When you do this regularly, this is a month's supply. If you do this regularly, what will happen is your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve, your brain function will improve. Why? Because you're bringing down inflammation. You're soaking up free radicals and you're detoxifying. If your body's full of toxic ingredients, do you think your body is going to perform as well? Of course not. So by taking this, your endocrine system and your immune system will improve. By bringing down inflammation, you'll help with your cardiovascular system. So this is very important to slow down the aging process and to get healthy. So please go to my store and get this heirloom barley. You can't get this at a regular store. This has micronutrients. It's very powerful. Please detoxify your body regularly. And lastly, vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help with your cellular metabolism The first 4 B vitamins helps with the electron transport chain, so you have more ATP. More ATP means you have more energy, so the cells and the tissues will perform better. And vitamin B12 helps to protect neurons. Again, protecting your neurons is super important once you turn age 40. So if you're 40 years of age or older, you need to start taking vitamin B complex. You stack this, you're targeting your immune system and your endocrine system, your cardiovascular health, your brain health. So it's very powerful stack here. Vitamin B complex, magnesium and zinc, omega-3, olive leaf extract, vitamin C and magnesium, and heirloom barley. Now, some people can't afford all that, but I just told you on how to stack and target, and if you get supplements that are dual purpose, it's really important. Like 2 dual purpose supplements right here, the olive leaf extract and the heirloom barley. Or, like I said, the magnesium and zinc in the heirloom barley. So you can stack them in a certain way to get the max benefit. You want to stack to get dual purpose, to get the max benefit out of your dollars. Please use discount 5, all caps, discount the number 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. All right? So you get some extra stuff. All right? You're going to need it. Get healthy. And oh, by the way, K is coming around the corner. You better be prepared for it.
Founding father, because
Make the internet's favorite sheets, Miracle Made sheets. Made with silver-infused fabrics to help keep you at the perfect temperature all night long. Girls.
and statue of our founding fathers, because they owned slaves, even though slavery was widespread across the whole planet. Going back into old books and removing offensive language. Insisting that people can change their gender, and attacking anyone who dare disagree with this radical idea as hateful. Free speech and open debate were non-existent in Mao's China. This was about submission and fear. Where there was no room for dissent or dialogue, force filled the void. Millions of people died during this cultural revolution. Nobody really knows how many. Who now unleashed his student mobs to destroy dissent. He specifically gave instructions. Do not use police force, no exception, to intervene or suppress the movement of revolutionary students. If you think I'm being hyperbolic by comparing Mao's nightmare to modern America, here's Brett Weinstein describing what happened when the mobs came for him.
In that state of riot, the president of the college forbid the campus police from intervening. In fact, he ordered them to lock themselves in their police station, and it descended into literal anarchy.
So you don't have to watch that door, watch all the doors, watch the windows, you need to keep eyes on
It essentially sounded like you're being held hostage there. You're gonna go to the bathroom, you had to go with 2 escorts, is that true? That's what the students felt was true.
Bands of students were patrolling the campus, stopping traffic on a public road that passed through campus. At one point, I was riding my bike and I saw a bunch of people waiting who I thought I recognized from the protests and riots the day before. And that spooked me. And I said to the police chief, I said, I must be imagining this, but I think there were some people waiting for me at the entrance to campus. She said, I don't think you're imagining that. I think they are looking for you. What's more, we can't protect you. We've been ordered not to act, and you're not safe anywhere in town on your bicycle, and you're not safe on campus at all. I could barely wrap my mind around it. Even still, I have a hard time imagining it, though it clearly happened, and I'm fortunate that it was so well documented that no one could doubt it. And it leaves me with a question, which is, I know they were looking for me. Do they know what they were planning to do if they had found me?
I'm not saying if they found him, it would have ended like it did for so many during the Cultural Revolution. On the other hand, look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. Look at the response online to that murder.
I've been saying we need to bring back political assassinations. I don't feel bad, and I don't think that everyone deserves the right to free speech. I think some people should be afraid to express their opinion in public.
I'm surprised that y'all didn't get rid of him sooner. And I'm surprised that you guys aren't getting rid of more people.
You don't have to like violence, but I'm confused as to how you thought the revolution was going to be magically bloodless.
Thousands of people willing to put their names and faces out into the world for everyone, including their families and employers, to see.
Charlie Kirk just got shot in the neck.
Celebrating political assassination, and millions of people liking, sharing, and cheering them on. We're closer to domination by the Red Guard than you or I.
Exactly. This is there is a moment in American history right now. It's an inflection point. Are we going to have our society devolve, or are we going to rise up and be that shining light? Will there be a moment in time in the near future where America rises up from this and it becomes that God, country, and family ethos again? We get away from this postmodern philosophy that has destroyed this country's viability. I am not positive about the future of this the younger generation coming into the workforce. They look unhealthy. They look that they have a lot of psychiatric problems. And I think there is a multitude of reasons why that's happening. I think some of it is environmental. Some of it is due to subculture drug abuse. And other parts of it is an overuse of social technologies. But there seems to be a psychiatric problem here on top of an ideological issue. So I'm pessimistic about this new generation that's coming into existence and plugging into the job market. Some of them can't even get jobs. I mean, would you really hire someone that has a bone through their nose and a bunch of tattoos? They don't look like they're the best employee that you would want. So some of them won't be able to get jobs. But there's a psychiatric thing that's going on with these people that are just like, I see it all the time in New York, all right? It's not healthy. It's not good. Society needs to get back to a little bit of a conservative, Protestant worth ethic kind of mentality. It's sad. It's very sad.
And here's the thing about Mao's Red Guard. Eventually, they got too crazy even for him. In 1968, he called in the army to stop the movement of students that he himself had unleashed. They were, in a sense, destroyed by
sort of seeing this already, where you have centrist Democrats pushing back the ultra-liberal.
Power they fought for. Decades later, that authoritarian power still had a stranglehold in China when the world witnessed another crackdown that contained a profound lesson about free speech, the Tiananmen Square massacre. This is the same Tiananmen Square where, just a few years earlier, Chairman Mao had addressed hundreds of thousands of his Red Guard. Except this time, in 1989, the students weren't fighting as soldiers for the authoritarian Chinese regime. They were in the streets, peacefully demonstrating for democracy.
My name is Wang Dan. I was a former student leader in 1989, and after Tiananmen massacre, I was put in jail for several years and then exiled to the United States.
Leading up to Tiananmen, Wang Dan thought that he and other students organizing for democracy were doing something important.
When there's democratic movement and the people gathering at Tiananmen Square, everything in my mind is we are writing history now. It's an honor to do this.
For 7 weeks, The new Bearskin Hoodie 4.0 claims to be the most advanced, waterproof tactical hoodie ever made. But the real question is, does it work? For 7 weeks, in the spring of 1989, the students protested in Tiananmen Square.
We have several requests during all protests. One of them, and the very big one of them, is freedom of speech.
At first, the communist government allowed the protests. Then their tolerance ended.
We never expected the government will open fire and send the troop to crack down us. So when that happened on June 3rd, my personal experience, at least me myself, just totally numbed.
这是一同学的血，我没有受伤，我抬起同学的手，在同学脖子后面，只是默默的热血。
Nobody knows how many people were killed, likely thousands. Wang Dan wasn't in the square during the crackdown.
I got a lot of phone calls from my classmates. Oh, the government opened fire. Many people died. Of course, I feel very angry. After that, somebody warned me that the government will arrest you. You have to escape.
He hid out for a while, but was eventually arrested in July of 1989.
They accused me of trying to overthrow government and try to find the turmoil inside the country.
In the end, Wang Dan spent about 5 years in prison. And when he got out, he fled China. Now he's been banned from the country forever. His story is important for many reasons. Number one, he grew up in a place that simply did not acknowledge the right to free speech or open debate.
I grew up in China. We never have any experience of a debate. There's no any space for debate. Everything decided by the government. Nothing related to debate. You are not permitted to debate. Maybe you can debate about some personal issues. The government don't care. But in public sphere, no, you cannot debate. You have to obey the order from the party.
Just as chillingly, he grew up in a time not long after Mao's Cultural Revolution. And yet, because there was no free speech, no free press, and because people couldn't openly debate or even discuss public policy, the Cultural Revolution may as well have never happened.
We know nothing about the Cultural Revolution. Even though just 10 years later, we know almost nothing. I'm kind of a student who interested in learning history, so I know a little bit. But most of my classmates, they don't know. Because right after the Cultural Revolution, the government started to try to cover the truth because we do not have freedom of speech. So
now this is an extreme case, but you're seeing elements of this in the United States, where we have debate. The ultra-lib thinks they win the argument, and then the debate's over. And on to the next subject. And heaven forbid you want to debate it again. The ultra-lib wants to destroy our constitutional freedoms. They don't believe in a constitutional republic. They believe in a top-down, central control government. It's not we the people. They want Animal Farm. They want to be Napoleon, the pig. And tell me, usually young kids are wrong because they don't have experience. And if these young kids are starting to devolve society and cause havoc in economic markets, don't be surprised that people start pushing back. Don't be surprised that inclusiveness within a society starts to be hampered. Do you want to be around people that cause problems in your community? Do you want people in your community that brings down your home prices? or raises your taxes with very little benefit for the society? Do you want to be sending your kids to a school where there's lots of problems, behavioral problems, safety issues? Do you? Of course not. But that's what they promote. This is what the ultra-liberal promotes. Unsafe schools, lack of accountability, performance on math, science, reading, mathematics, all these different subjects, all these kids are failing on. The student's performance is poor. But we do have a section of society that is performing. A small sliver, maybe 20%, maybe 10%, that's really pushing the envelope for the society that has the God, country, and family ethos. Stay away from people that are just sacks of shit.
Years when I grew up in Beijing, there's no free space for you to discuss or rethink what happened in Cultural Revolution.
He fears that today, many people in China know nothing about the slaughter at Tiananmen because, well, how would they?
Now 30 years past, the young generation know nothing about 1989. That's just exactly because we do not have freedom of speech.
Wang Dan and what he experienced in China is a stark, powerful reminder about what we have to lose here in America. This is what's at stake when the new Red Guard, our critical social justice warriors, try to tear down our traditions, and when deluded extremists knock down the cultural pillars built by Western civilization. He does not mince words when asking what woke anti-free speech culture reminds him of.
Well, when I learned the history of Cultural Revolution, I think a very big problem is we have a god in China. His name is Mao Zedong.
Right.
You just have to follow Mao Zedong's teaching. There's no any other knowledge. The political correctness just like another god. You cannot say something different. Otherwise, you'll be pushed away from the mainstream.
I've revisited these stories here, from the insanity of the Grievance Studies affair to Brett Weinstein's surreal targeting at Evergreen to Mao's horrific cultural revolution. Not to ratchet up the heat in our culture war, but as a warning. Without speech and open debate, here's what happens. Entire disciplines like those exposed in the Grievance Studies affair become ideologically captured, utterly disconnected from reality, and dangerously radical. Leading journals and whole universities become jokes. No one involved knows it, and if they do know it, they're too afraid to say the emperor has no clothes. The joke becomes less funny when...
Throw it as hard as you want. Go on. Watching it zip away feels like it might just keep going, right? Nope, here it comes. This thing's a total game.
The joke becomes less funny when these ideas get baked into the cake, universally accepted and taught to our kids. And this is the fertile ground where noxious, parasitic ideas grow. Ideas like speech is violence. That's what happened at Evergreen. That's what happened in a more extreme version to Charlie Kirk. And it's what could happen over and over again if we don't tear this rotten tree out by the root.
If they start saying, here's what you can say, here's what you can't say, that's totalitarianism, and that's ultimate control. That's a sort of vice grip control. And it's really saying we control what you think, and that's really kind of universal control. So if they can control what you say, then they can control what you think and what other people think and what other people think of what you say. So I think the pushback for folks like myself is that's governmental overreach, but it's also sort of human overreach.
The question is, could one of the roots of this tree be embedded in high school debate itself? is the NSDA, which clearly shows outward signs of this rot, damage to the core, part of this blob that's wreaking so much havoc on the minds of young people. On the next episode, we'll go into the belly of the beast, the NSDA National Championship, to find out.
That was a really, really good critique of what's going on. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol is something I've been taking for decades. It's going to help to slow down the aging process. Now, some people will say, why? Well, let me tell you. Resveratrol will soak up free radicals and help the health of the mitochondria so you have more energy. More energy, that means your cells and tissues will perform better. Resveratrol will also help with gene expression. It'll help to maintain and promote youthful gene expression. As you get older, you start methylating genes. Well, if you take resveratrol regularly, you're slowing down that aging process on your genes and slowing down that epigenetic change in the profile. Now, resveratrol will also help to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Senesced cells just collect garbage. That's not good for your body. You want to get rid of those and develop healthier tissue. So please take resveratrol every day. Super important. It's very high quality. It stacks really well with C60. To get the max benefits out of resveratrol, stack it with C60 or NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. This is really powerful. Take it every day. Clarity factor will get rid of brain fog and allow you to concentrate. So you have this zone of concentration on tasks. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. And this will help with the positive neuroplasticity so you're thinking faster and you have better memory. Super important. If you do this regularly, especially when you're younger, then your memory health, your neural health, that neural connection will be much better when you get older. So please go to my store, get the clarity factor, take it every day as part of the anti-aging protocol. To help with the health of your pancreas, take digestive enzyme complex. This will help to digest the proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, reduce the stress on your digestive system so you can absorb your nutrients. This also has bromelain in it to help break up clots because it's fibrinolytic, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. Super important, especially during the cold season. Myotrol. When you're 40 years of age or older, you start losing muscle. It's harder to gain muscle. Taking Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take Myotrol. What this will do is help with the gene expression to build up that muscle, help the health of the mitochondria so you have the energy to maintain the muscle. And over time, you're going to build up your fitness level and your musculature. Make sure you do back exercises. Many people, especially when they get older, they don't focus on their back. Build the back muscles, really important. That will improve your posture, improve your venous return flow to your heart, so your cardiovascular system will improve, and it will help with the flow of your lymphatic system. In addition, by improving your back muscles, you'll improve your posture and your bone density for your vertebrae will improve. So you get a lot of benefits by just doing some targeted workouts, especially for the back muscles. Take Myotrol every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from Myotrol to build muscle. And go to my store and get the dual purpose deodorants. You can get it in citrus and also in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These deodorants are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural ingredients, very high quality. It's dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant and it will help to detoxify your body. This will help with your immune system and your endocrine system. Get a couple bars for your household, help support the work that I do, and help support your health and wellness. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And lastly, get the zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Do this regularly to detoxify your body, help your immune system and your endocrine system. When you have a better immune system and endocrine system, you age slower. It's that simple. Please go to my store, use discount 5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, now we're going to go through a critique of the U.S. national security strategy. This is from the perspective of Australians, but I think that there's some important perspectives that we need to investigate here.
The language is ambiguous, so it's very unclear what it hopes to achieve.
It's hard to imagine the vital security interests of one also being a vital security interest of the other.
This has brought the idea of theatre influence already back.
Oh, we do.
They've got to look at Australia because we're way ahead of any of the Europeans on that.
But I must say, coming away from this document, I'm no more sure than I was before it was produced which one is in charge. Hello, I'm Sam Rutherford from the Lowy Institute.
And I'm Hugh White from the Strategic and Defence Studies Centre at ANU.
This is Foreign Exchange, and let's talk about the US national security strategy. So, Hugh, this is a document that every administration in the US produces, and it offers us an opportunity to get inside the very deepest thoughts that the administration has about where it sees its place in the world, how its worldview, how it understands the direction of international affairs and America's role and America's place in it. I was particularly looking forward to this one because I thought it might help me with a mystery that's been bugging me since January when the Trump was inaugurated, which is to understand better who was actually in charge among the different schools of thought within the administration. Now, even before the inauguration, the European Council on Foreign Relations put out a report late last year, which introduced a sort of typology and nomenclature about the administration, which has become a kind of a standard language that everyone uses now. And what they did was divide Trump's senior advisors into 3 schools: the primicists, the prioritizers, and the restrainers. Now, very briefly, just to explain those 3 schools. The primicists were those who insisted that the United States had to remain strong all around the world. And the leading figures in that school of thought were probably Mike Pompeo, who was Secretary of State in the first Trump administration, didn't get a job in this one. The other one, probably Mike Waltz, who was the National Security Advisor early on, but has now been effectively demoted to ambassador to the UN. So I think we can already say, just based on those simple facts, that the primicists have been set aside. It's a battle between the restrainers and the prioritizers. So what are the prioritizers? These are the folks who say, well, sorry, primicists, but we are overstretched in Europe. We are overstretched in the Middle East. We need to focus on the most important contest that we're now involved in, and that is the one with China in the Asia Pacific. And therefore, we need to move our attention and also our material, our effort to the Asia Pacific region. Probably the central intellectual figure in that respect is Elbridge Colby, the Deputy Secretary of Defence for Strategy, who probably had a hand, I would argue, in the national security strategy.
You can see his pen at several points.
Right. And then lastly, we have the restraint school, which basically says, look, the United States is a world power. We have global interests, but we are not interested in a strategic competition with China. We are certainly interested in economic competition with China, but not strategic or military competition. The bit of the globe that matters most to us is the Western Hemisphere, and so we should focus on that. Now, who was in that restraint school? Arguably President Trump himself, although on any given day he could give any point of view. So to sum all that up, what I was looking forward to was a bit more clarity. Well, who's in charge here? Is it the prioritizers or is it the restrainers? And I must say, coming away from this document, I'm no more sure than I was before it was.
I think it's the prioritizers. Now, I've seen this video. They're going to make the argument that maybe it's, a different group. I think it's prioritizing. Now, some may say, well, it's more of an isolationist, just Western Hemisphere. I personally think it's the first move of a longer strategic path towards countering the advancements of China. So it's prioritizing. Control this South America, the resources that we need. Now, a lot of people would say, well, the United States has tons of oil, which we do. A lot of it's from shale, but there's different viscosities of oil. There is heavy, medium, and light crude, all right? And then also sulfur contents also. We can get into the chemistry of this in a different show. But there's viscosity differences. So heavy, which is thicker. You have medium, which is what you would typically think oil would be. And light, which is a little bit more watery, and in some cases cloudy, sometimes clear, depending on where it's fracked. But there's these viscosity differences. The United States has a lot of light. It's what's called light sweet crude. All right. So we have medium and light, a lot of it. But in the processing, in some of our processing plants, we need to have also fed in heavy viscosity. Venezuela has heavy viscosity. So does Canada. This is about oil, but it's also about the rare earth metals, because oil and rare earth metals are going to be very important in a war against China. So I think it's the prioritizers that are winning out in this strategy here, not the isolations.
Which one is in charge?
Yeah.
You could argue it different ways. A lot of people, I think, initially were struck by the fact that the Western Hemisphere has such a large role in this national security strategy. A revival of the Monroe Doctrine and a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is introduced. But then again, as others have said, look, the Americans have always been interested in the Western Hemisphere. Have always said that the security of the Western Hemisphere and of the continental United States is vital and is central. So maybe that's no different. Slightly more emphasis, sure, but not that different to previous national security strategies. Then again, you could also say that the emphasis on the Pacific is of a very particular sort. I think you've got some things to say about this. It still insists on military leadership and a military primacy, although I'm not sure that word is actually used. Overmatch, I think, actually, is the term that's used. But on the other hand, there is a strong economic emphasis in the Asia-Pacific section on securing America's sea lines of communication, but not so much on securing allies and on securing Taiwan, for instance. So, like I said, I'm no more sure than I was the day before this was released about who's actually in charge in this contest for influence. Over and above all that, and I'll finish here, Hugh, is just to say that it may not even matter that much. These national security strategies, these documents are sort of ornaments and are useful for people like you and me as subjects to talk about, but do they actually influence the way politics works, the way the administration actually conducts its affairs? You're better placed to talk about that stuff than I am.
Well, I don't know about that, but look, I do think it's an interesting document. I do think these documents are important, because in the end, if countries are going to undertake, major long-term strategic commitments to meet major long-term strategic objectives, they do need to explain what they are, and they do need to give evidence that they've actually thought through what they're trying to achieve and how they're going to do it. And I don't think this document does any better than its predecessors in setting out for America really key strategic priorities or means to achieve them, at least beyond the Western Hemisphere. I mean, I think in terms of your...
Now, there was a former diplomat strategist that was being interviewed on foreign affairs. It was either foreign affairs or CFR. I don't remember which podcast it was on. But she worked in previous administrations. And she was stating that this strategic plan was actually more focused than prior. Like, especially when you compare Clinton's strategic plan relative to Trump's. Bill Clinton's strategic plan was more of a, how she phrased it, was a Christmas tree of niceties and wants. It was more of a wish list for Santa Claus than anything else. Well, this was a little bit more targeted, and more of a focused strategy. And you got to remember, China does their white paper on their strategy and how they want to take over Taiwan and by 2027. So I think it was needed to have a more focused strategy, especially with a important pivot to Asia. Now, there are some key missing words in the strategy that are upsetting the CFR analysts and individuals coming from CSIS and foreign relations. And that's not enough about China in it. And it was very focused on Western Hemisphere and the decoupling from, or the disengagement from, Europe. Now you got to remember, there's like two main groups: the Trilateral Commission and CFR. Now CFR is more tied, the Council of Foreign Relations is more tied to Europe. Well, the Trilateral Commission is more tied to South America, Central America. So there's a battle between the CFR and the Trilateral.
Typology. I think the restrainers have had a pretty big win in this one because the emphasis on the Western Hemisphere is so strong. Of course, you might say the Monroe Doctrine's never disappeared, although it's worth remembering that back in 2010 or thereabouts, Kerry, as Secretary of State,
Whether it's veggies or grains, give those store-bought bags a squeeze, and you'll usually find they're missing an airtight seal. So bacteria grows easily, moisture gets in, and our food turns bad fast. But check this out. It's called the Plateful Jar Vacuums.
as Secretary of State, from Kerry as Secretary of State, said that the Monroe Doctrine was finished, out loud. And others, I mean, Hillary Clinton and Condi Rice at different times said the whole idea of spheres of influence were out of date. This has brought the idea of spheres of influence roaring back, and has, although, like I say, this is a win for the restrainers, but what the document actually says America wants to do in the Western Hemisphere is extremely unrestrained. I mean, it's an expansion of America's, at least the declaration of what it intends to do in the Western Hemisphere, really make it a sort of an economic as well as strategic, sort of subordinate element to the to America. It's more ambitious than anything in any interpretation of the Monroe Doctrine that we've seen in my lifetime, I think. So I think that's, that's part of it. But another way of looking at it is, the last US national security, the Trump administration, the national security strategy introduced by the first Trump administration in December 2017, at the end of their first year in office, was very significant because that was the document that declared Russia and China as first-order strategic rivals to the United States. And that was the beginning of the era in which it became commonplace to say that we live in a world of great power rivalry, because, of course, for the decades between the collapse of the Soviet Union and then, people had stopped talking about great power rivalry. Now, the interesting thing about this national security strategy, it sort of declares the end of great power rivalry by saying, actually, America is content to live in a world with other great powers and accept that other great powers will have their own spheres of influence. including even, I mean, the language is ambiguous. It's very unclear what it hopes to achieve, what the administration hopes to achieve strategically in Asia in relation to China. But it certainly seems to me to go a long way towards accepting that China is going to be a much more significant player in Asia than it used to be, which I would say is a good thing.
And I think that point was reinforced by Pete Hegseth just a few days ago.
Hegseth gave a major speech at the Reagan Library, which is, I think, an important kind of counterpoint to the national security strategy, in which he said in words of one syllable, in exactly those words, that the United States does not seek to dominate Asia, it seeks a balance of power with China. And he goes to some length in that speech to talk about how the United States wants a good relationship with China, which is very much consistent with other things that the Trump administration has been doing recently, and very different, for example, from the language that Biden used, for example, when he talked about extreme competition with China, which was a phrase he used quite often, or winning a contest for the 21st century against China, which was another Biden era slogan. So I do think there are some significant shifts here, but there's all sorts of weirdness in it. You know, the stuff about Europe, the sort of Europe civilizational decline and so on. But for me, the really big important takeaway is that what this document shows is that, notwithstanding, for example, the clear evidence in the document that America wants to sustain some significant strategic role in East Asia, there is no evidence the United States has a plan to build the resources, build the diplomatic position, the economic position, or the military position to achieve that in the face of China's challenge. And, aspirations aren't strategies. As the document itself actually says, a strategy has to embody both what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And once again, as we've seen so often in the past, the United States, this administration, has no coherent plan to achieve the objectives it set itself. So in the most fundamental sense, what this document is.
But that was a problem with many other presidents. It was a wish list that didn't really have a strategy. I have a feeling that they just hate Trump.
Again, it reaffirms that the United States does not have a national security strategy. What it has is a document full of all sorts of wacky aspirations.
But I do think, on your point about China and Hegseth's comments, what the United States is inching towards under this administration is actually really important about the first year of Trump's second term, inching towards a position where it regards China as a normal and legitimate and equal great power.
Yes.
And that is, I think, an important thing that Trump himself has, in his own way, started to signal to his own people that this is, well, he calls it, when he meets with Xi Jinping, he refers to it as a G2.
Yes,
so that automatically accords China equal status with the United States.
Yeah.
That's a really important signal to America's own people.
Yeah.
And I would also say, and this is a slightly more tentative claim, that Trump may be the first president since Nixon to regard the Chinese Communist Party as fully legitimate, which is to say there is no subtext here about it's not democratic and you've never been endorsed by the Chinese people. And a sense that there at some point could be regime change in China, and that China will only be fully legitimate if that happens. Trump doesn't care about any of that, and he regards the present leadership as entirely legitimate.
Yeah, no, look, that's right. It's not just that Trump doesn't care about it, but Trump has never cared about that. But the people around him don't care about it. I mean, the contrast is with his secretary, his most longest-serving Secretary of State in his first term, Mike Pompeo, who, right at the end of Trump's first term, gave a big speech also in California, in which he virtually called for regime change in China. Now, you're absolutely right. This is just no part of the Trump administration's approach to the world. In fact, the only countries in the world in which the national security strategy expresses any concern about their political inflection is Western Europe.
Yes, and it is an extraordinary aspect of the document, the Europe section. A couple of points on that. One is that, to go back to the typologies, the reason why restraint doesn't quite capture what's in this document is that in some ways it is wildly ambitious.
Yeah, no, that's right.
It basically argues that US national security policy is ultimately concerned with rescuing Western civilization.
Yes.
So, that is
from Western Europe.
From Western Europe, right. Now, the other point to note about the section on Western Europe, which is bordering on unhinged, really, is why Australia gets off so lightly. When you think about the rant in that document and from various officials in the Trump administration about the sort of insidious effects that mass migration is having. Well, why is Australia excluded from that judgment, given that our mass migration policies are actually much more extensive than any of those Western Europe powers that they're aiming their ire at?
In fact, the documents, the national security strategy specifically raises doubts about the future reliability of Western Europe, European countries as US allies because of their non-European immigration. Well, as you say, they better look at Australia because we're way ahead of any of the Europeans on that.
I think
and proudly so.
Indeed. And I think that the difference there is that, and the reason we are accepted is because we are a settler nation, just like the United States is. And we are not seen in that sort of bizarro worldview in Washington as being a kind of repository of Western civilization, the way that the Europeans are. So I think on those grounds we are accepted, but I'm not sure we should be entirely happy with that. Or content to sort of rest on that distinction. And like you say, we should actually be extremely proud of the fact that we've done this, in fact, better than any Western European country.
I mean, the other thing I think we should just note, anyone who's inclined to take comfort from those elements of the NSS that express support for the United States role in Asia, be very careful about how strongly it focuses on pressing allies to do more, and how clearly we should expect to be under a lot of pressure from Washington to do more ourselves strategically, defence spending and so on. The other element, though, is the way in which the document comes back to an idea which has been ticking along throughout the first year of the second Trump administration, and that is of drawing US allies away from China economically and drawing US allies into a US-led economic order. Now, there's only a couple of lines, but it's one of those ideas which has never quite gone away. Now, it's not that I think it's going to happen. Like a lot of other stuff in the national security strategy, I think in the end it's just fanciful. But the fact that that's the mindset, those are the expectations that Washington has of how alliances are going to work in the years ahead. There's a fairly consistent pattern here. The Trump administration is offering US allies less and demanding more of them.
Now, we're out of time, but the other thing that's mentioned in the national security.
Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes when it comes to military conflicts? Maybe it's because we stopped studying war. Victor Davis Hanson believes military.
Other thing that's
before we do that, before we continue with this video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. This is very high quality collagen. The typical amino acid profile shown on the screen here. It's a month's supply. Take it every day. It'll help with your musculature, your skin, your nails, your hair, your joint health, your cartilage, and even your bone density. Take it every day. And to get added benefits, stack it with the vitamin C and magnesium that I have, and drink 32 to 64 ounces of filtered water daily. And that will help with the dermal layer and improve your skin even further. Also, take the probiotic and the multivitamin that I have as a foundation for your healthcare protocol. Now, the complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly. It's easy to digest. It's a very high quality multivitamin. And stack it with the probiotics that I have. You can get the powdered version or the veggie cap version that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. A good probiotic is going to help with your gut biome, allow you to absorb your nutrients properly, reduce inflammation, boost up your immune system at the gut level, improve your cellular metabolism, and improve your brain function. It'll help you to sleep better. By having proper sleep, you're going to be able to detoxify your central nervous system and consolidate memory, and you'll be well rested. In addition, a good probiotic will also help with skin health. Please go to my store, get this probiotic and the multivitamin. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Discount, all caps, number 5, $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Be prepared. Boost up that immune system. Sub K is coming around the corner. You need to be prepared.
Somewhat surprisingly, if you're asking me, is the quad.
Yes.
That's what we're going to do next.
Yes, indeed. I mean, in a document that's very reluctant to talk about anything even remotely multilateral, the quad is just about the only thing that gets mentioned. Strikingly, it's mentioned in the Asia section, and in the very long part of the Asia section that talks about economics. Indeed, the Asia section of the National Security Strategy is headed. Has a very strong reference to economics in the headings. It's really that's the key focus. But I think that it does seem to me that we can see this right now with Modi welcoming Putin to Delhi. The way in which the Quad is failing to deliver what Washington, and for that matter, what Canberra has long hoped it would deliver, and that is a clear alignment of like-minded democracies in Asia to push back and resist China's challenge to the old US-led order in Asia. It does seem to me actually that the Quad is fraying actually from both ends, if I can put it that way. But if you think of the Quad geometrically, there's Japan and Australia in the middle, India on one side and America on the other. And it seems to me that India has never been seriously committed to the vision of the Quad that I just set out. India has never seen itself as adding its weight to support America in preserving US primacy in East Asia and the Western Pacific. What India had always been interested in, of course, is minimising China's capacity to intrude into South Asia and the Indian Ocean. And that's a big deal, particularly because of China's position in Pakistan. But that's the idea that India was somehow going to lend its weight to support countries like Australia and Japan and East Asia and the Western Pacific always seemed to me to be fanciful. And we've seen that because, Modi is so focused not on supporting America's position globally or regionally, but in optimising India's position.
Yeah.
And the way
it doesn't exclude good relations with Washington, of course.
It doesn't exclude good relations with Washington, but it does exclude India sacrificing its good relations, or at least the relationships it can develop with other important countries like Russia and China in order to do what America wants. And whereas it seems to me that the rationale of the Quad from Washington's point of view has always been that that's exactly what India would do. But at the same time, I think, notwithstanding the reference to the national security strategy, it does seem to me that Washington's commitment to the Quad fades as Washington's commitment to its vision, to the vision of sustaining US primacy in East Asia and the Western Pacific has faded. And we've just discussed that really does seem to be fading out of the mindset as expressed in the national security strategy. I mean, it's a very interesting example of this at the moment, with Washington's failure to strongly back Japan, as Japan comes under some real pressure from Beijing over Takaichi's comments about Taiwan. A couple of weeks ago now, she more or less said that Japan would need to go to war to support the United States in the war with China over Taiwan. At least that's the way the Chinese interpreted what she said, I think, not unreasonably. Now, that did go further than Japanese prime ministers have gone in the past. In some ways, that appears to be doing exactly what documents like the National Security Strategy, and for that matter, Pete Hegseth in his Reagan Library speech want. That is, for US allies to step up. But Washington has been very notable in its reluctance to support Tokyo, as Tokyo has faced pressure from Beijing, because, precisely as you were saying before, from Donald Trump's point of view, optimizing the relationship with China, preserving his capacity to do the economic deals with China, but that underlying sort of psychology, as you said, of treating China as a G2 equal, in which case he's not going to sacrifice Trump is not going to sacrifice relations with Beijing in order to support Japan. Well, that's the new reality, and that again undermines the whole idea of the Quad as this sort of coalition of like-minded democracies pushing back against the Chinese demo.
There's never been any hope, it seems to me, of overcoming two core limits on what the Quad could ever be, geography and economics.
Yes,
so physically, these countries are so far apart that it's hard to imagine the vital security interests of one also being a vital security interest of the other. So the Quad is not ever, for instance, going to ensure that Japan and Australia contribute in the event that India has another border war with Beijing, for instance. That is never going to change. That is never going to be a vital interest for either of those two countries. Enough to make them participate in that war or in such a border clash. And the economics are also clear. I mean, from India's perspective, firstly, it is almost impossible for India to modernise in the way that it wants to if it doesn't have a constructive economic relationship with Beijing.
Yes, that's right.
And that in turn is going to limit how far it can go in its relationship with Japan and Australia and Washington, most importantly. But that logic is true for Australia as well, and also for Japan.
Absolutely.
Less so for the United States, which is almost autarkic in that sense. But
no, that's exactly right. In the end, I mean, what you say is precisely right. In the end, there is simply not a sufficient convergence of interests, strategic or economic, between those four powers to generate the kind of collaborative activity that you'd require in order to make the thing song and dance. And it's just the contrast with NATO is very stark. NATO works as a strategic entity because that very dense concentration in that small subcontinent, means that Germany's security really does depend on Poland's, and France's security really does depend on Germany's, in a way that Australia's security doesn't depend on Japan's or India, and vice versa. And America has options, and this is really part of the national security strategy story. Donald Trump loves talking about the big, beautiful oceans. America has options to sit in the Western Hemisphere, dominate the Western Hemisphere, and deal with countries on either side of those big, beautiful oceans with a certain amount of restraint and distance.
Now, just to bring it full circle, the reference to the Quad in the National Security Strategy comes in a specific section of that document, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, it's framed absolutely within an economic section of the document, and it does reflect the sort of overwhelming theme of the national security strategy, that it seeks to use America's role, or at least its potential, as a strategic partner in order to shoehorn people into supporting America's, what the document describes as America's economic primacy. Now, in fact, the document is, I think, deeply complacent about America's resources. It talks about America being the world's biggest and most vibrant and most innovative economy with the most dynamic technology and so on. That's just not true anymore. And I think there's a real underlying tension there.
Well, I'm slightly...
This is a camera lucida, and throughout the 19th century, it was an indispensable drawing aid for artists and technical illustrators alike, and yet it's virtually unknown.
I'm slightly less pessimistic about America overall than you are, I think. For me, it's been notable over the last couple of years, just the sheer weight of effort that the United States has been able to throw at AI, for instance, the investments, the massive investments that the United States, like no other country in the world, is able to do. I also think that, well, the United States is still a comparatively young country demographically. It has all the ingredients for incredible economic dynamism over the long term. And so I think for the broader worldview to work, for the broader argument to work, that China is going to become the leading, if not the dominant power in the Asia Pacific, and the United States is going to recede as a power in the Asia Pacific, you do not need to believe that the United States is in absolute decline.
I actually agree with that. No part of my thinking is the United States disappears as an extraordinarily rich power.
I still think that the United States is going to have hegemonic power in Asia, but it is predicated on making sure that Taiwan is defended and that we have strong allies in the region, like Australia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. Before we continue, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, detoxify your body, and help to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Gladiator Barley. This will help your immune system and your endocrine system by bringing down inflammation. You're helping your cardiovascular system, and also bringing down inflammation at your brain level will help your neurons to be healthy. Also, a great way to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system is to take the stack. This will slow down the aging process. Take turmeric every day. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Lignans helps your immune system and your endocrine system, brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. And ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels and blood glucose levels, brings down inflammation. You stack this together, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to boost up your immune system, you're going to help your endocrine system, you're going to help your cardiovascular system and your brain function. Because by bringing down inflammation, your organ systems will perform better and you're slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, make sure you get the ashwagandha root, the lignans, and the turmeric. This is a very powerful stack. And to add to that powerful stack, get the Gladiator Barley. Detoxifies your body, brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals, and it helps you to build muscle. Make sure you use discount 5. I want you to save money. I want you to get these products and use them regularly. Why? Because the healthier you are, the more productive our society will be, the less our healthcare costs will be. Please go to my store, get the great products that I offer. Click the link in the description of this video and all my videos. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Old country, I just don't think we can sensibly expect it to remain either the world's biggest economy, because in PPP terms with the ones that really matter, that's not true already, nor the world's most dynamic and innovative economy. You know, I do think there comes a time we have to start paying attention to the data, a lot of data, that China is now right at the forefront of innovation across a whole range of technologies, including its capacity to turn innovations into real products. You know, it is an engineering superpower. Now, that doesn't mean that China's going to rule the world. It doesn't even mean that China's going to rule Asia, because there's always going to be India there. I think America's chance, though, of competing effectively with China to prevent China becoming the leading power in East Asia and the Western Pacific, for America to preserve that balance of power that X has talked about, is going to require, in the face of China's strength, an effort on scale, accepting costs and risks in Asia, which I think there's no evidence the United States is able or willing to do. And that's, in the end, a great flaw, great hole in the middle of the national security strategy, that even with its relatively restrained ambitions in Asia, It does not commit America. It doesn't explain why America should commit the resources to push back effectively against China and prevent China doing what it's doing. Okay, so let's talk about recommendations. My work reading at the moment, for various reasons, I found myself going back to studying the Pacific War, which in the 1980s I spent a lot of time reading about. And I've gone back to a couple of books that I've read back then, including one that's right on my desk at the moment by a guy called H.P. Wilmot, called Empires in the Balance, which describes the way in which America and Japan and Britain fell into war in 1941. And it's, of course, you know, the relevance to our present predicament is fairly clear, but it's a terrific story. My recreational reading at the moment, my son gave me Bernard Herzog's autobiography memoir. It's a very eccentric book, but it's
incredible figure,
incredible filmmaker, and it's the most compelling reading going. So that's keeping me happy.
On that score, I can recommend a very short clip of Werner Herzog that you can easily find on YouTube about the story he tells about getting shot. I won't give it away, but it's extraordinary. And he tells it in such a matter-of-fact way.
It's like an image.
Yeah. So I'll give you two recommendations, and not easily divisible into work and leisure.
Happy situation.
But you were talking about China as a manufacturing power, and so I want to recommend a Substack called Construction Physics.
Oh yes,
I think you're aware of.
I know it. Yes.
And it refers to itself, describes itself as simply essays about buildings, infrastructure, and industrial technology.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. And it describes better than anything else I've seen in recent times how stuff gets built. And it's so important for understanding modern China, I think, but it does have an excellent essay, for instance, on the Chinese aviation industry, right? Yeah. But it goes far beyond that. So if you listen to housing, for instance, it tries to unpack this mystery of, you know, when so many things have become easier and cheaper to produce, why isn't housing easier and cheaper to produce? It's such a fascinating question.
And the two owner builder tragics like you and me.
Yeah, right. And then the second one is, and this is a downbeat note on which to end, but there's an essay by David Runciman, who's a political theorist at Cambridge University, who's written an essay in the London Review of Books called Are We Doomed?
Yes, I read it.
This is, to me, the most plausibly pessimistic take on the global fertility crisis. And it is a crisis. So in the past, we've been used to thinking about this as a sort of wealthy country problem. As countries get richer, their fertility rates decline. That's not true anymore. Even developing countries' fertility is declining. Interestingly, it's a separate essay that I read suggests that the common denominator here might be the smartphone. That might be responsible for the global decline.
We won't pursue that.
But anyway, Runciman, as I said, offers the most plausibly terrifying case for the long-term continuing decline of global fertility, and that it may be impossible to turn it around. I'm just waiting to see a counterpoint to this essay and hope that someone has a good counter.
Runciman is a terrific essayist, and I thought that was a wonderful piece of it, and as you say, very.
It goes back to God, Country, and Family. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients, very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. This is a month supply. Take it every day. This is going to target multiple systems. It's going to target your cardiovascular system, so it's going to improve that. It's going to improve your brain function. It'll slow down the aging process, boost up your musculature, your energy levels, and your metabolism. And by taking this regularly, you're going to control your A1C levels, do some resistance training, some cardio, some stretching and balancing exercises. You're going to be more active. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You take this regularly, and you're going to see how it's improving your immune system and your endocrine system. It's very important to take this every day, and it's one of the pillars of my health protocol that I take. Now, what is it basically? The foundation is the probiotic and the multivitamin. The first pillar is the Max 35 of cleanse to boost up the immune system. Second pillar, C60, is soak up free radicals. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to boost up your energy levels and rev up your metabolism. You take that stack and you're going to slow down the aging process. It's very powerful. Please make sure that you get this. Even if you don't take the full stack, you're going to get a lot of benefits from taking this. D3, super important to take during the winter season. It helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. You do resistance training, you're going to get better bone density. Vitamin D3 helps with cardiovascular health. And vitamin D3 is a cofactor for gene expression. So your genes are expressed properly. Vitamin D3 is super important to take. Please get the vitamin D3 from my store. Take it every day, especially during the winter season. It's going to be very important to take because of what's coming around the corner from Europe. It's called Sub K, all right? You want to pay attention. Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. When you are in those cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, you're consolidating memory, and you'll be well rested. If you have good sleep regularly, you'll slow down the aging process. And C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce if you get the higher ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. By doing this, you're going to soak up free radicals, reduce the stress on your cells and your tissues. The tissues will perform better, and your organ systems will perform better. Your immune system and your endocrine system will perform better. You'll reduce plaque formation and help with brain function. How? By soaking up free radicals and reducing stress at the neuron level, you'll have more ATP, you'll have healthier mitochondria, you'll have more neurotransmitters, you'll have better neuroplasticity over time. If you really want to slow down the aging process and improve your health, take C60. It is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, preferably on an empty stomach. If you work out, take it before you work out, you'll recover quicker. Get the C60, you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take it every day. And again, it's part of my anti-aging protocol. It's a major pillar. It stacks really well with the Boomer Boost. All right, with that, I want to play the video about the woman being stabbed in front of Macy's or in Macy's while she was changing her baby's diaper, I think it was.
Later on today, we could potentially get some comments from him. Sometimes he'll stop and speak with the different reporters there. So if that is the case, as you can imagine, we are going to bring you those details here on Live Now from Fox. Right now, I do want to head out to another story that we are following with the help of our teams over at Fox News. We do have a developing story coming in. Take a look at this right here on your screen. This is from the New York Post. As you can see, a homeless woman, they say, is accused of stabbing a tourist inside of a bathroom. Now, she's been released from a psych hospital the morning of that attack. There is so much information that is coming in here. I do want to bring in C.B. Cotton. She is with Fox News and has been following this story as all of this happening in a very busy area. C.B., thank you so much for being here. What do we know? What don't we know at this point?
Hey, Josh. Well, thanks for having us. So thankfully, one of the big takeaways is that the mother and her baby's father were able to fend off the attacker inside this Macy's. This is normally, it should have been a festive time for this mom who was traveling and visiting from California, a time where she could come inside this store, do some holiday shopping. But things quickly turned into a life or death situation when police say the suspect, Carrie Ahern of Massachusetts, came inside the bathroom and started stabbing this mother. Prosecutors say Ahern had been in the city's psychiatric center for more than a year when she was released on Thursday morning. They say she then went to a Macy's and purchased a knife for the attack. She was arraigned yesterday on multiple charges, including attempted murder, and she's now being held without bail. The mother and her baby, again, were visiting from California and are expected to be okay. The woman and her boyfriend are actually employees of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff thanked the NYPD for quickly bringing the suspect into custody. The suspect is reportedly homeless, and this case is now bringing Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's policy proposal of ending homeless encampment sweep back into the spotlight, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this, and it's a terrifying situation because it sounds as though there's no real connection here between the two. Have we heard if there's going to be really any type of news conference about this? Because I have to imagine that there's a lot of questions there from the public about how something like this could happen.
Josh, there are so many questions from people who are, New Yorkers and also people who are visiting. You come out here, it's freezing cold, as you can see, my eyes are running. You're just trying to enjoy the holiday season, the beautiful decorations, and again, some shopping. And you hear that a woman was randomly attacked inside one of the most iconic stores here in the Big Apple. People are really confused, and it's frankly quite terrifying. Again, we know this suspect was arraigned on multiple charges yesterday, including attempted murder, 2 counts of assault, criminal possession of a weapon, and endangering the welfare of a child. We aren't expecting to get any more updates over the weekend, but we do know the suspect is due back in court on December 17th. And if I didn't mention, she is being held without bail. But her attorney reportedly said during the court appearance yesterday that he will request bail during the next hearing. As I also talked about, Josh, the case really bringing back into spotlight some of Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's proposals. He said instead of the homeless encampment sweeps, he wants to connect people on the streets with social workers and try to use those social workers to persuade people to get into permanent housing. And this week, he doubled down on that idea despite pushback and criticism from both outgoing Mayor Eric Adams and New York Governor Kathy Hochul. This type of case, though, really prompting a lot of concern from people about how this idea to end sweeps might eventually carry over and cause some quality of life issues, because the suspect is said to be from Massachusetts, but once she got here to New York City, the thought is right now that she was homeless.
All right, CD Cotton there at Fox News. Of course, we are going to stay in touch. There is so much to this story, and I'm sure you'll have Zohran Mamdani and Eric Adams ask a lot of questions about that at any future news conferences. CD, thank you again for being here. We definitely appreciate it.
That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. I greatly appreciate it. If you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the great products that I offer, help support the work that I do, share the links, ask your social media to follow me. I have a show on Sunday. I'm going to be going live with John Hogue at 10 o'clock New York time. So please watch that. Thank you for joining, and have a nice day.